Welcome, I'm Harmony Quaker, and in this video, we are going to be talking about how to honor subtle energy in the context of a therapeutic session or a coaching session. I find that most therapists and coaches are really sensitive to and attuned to subtle energy, and yet training programs fail to offer us any real tools to honor and use this essential information to support our clients in their transformation. Before we dive into that, I want to let you know that I wrote a book for you. Align Living and Loving from the True Self is a comprehensive map of how to come back home to the truth of who you are and how to honor your alignment in your relationships with others. I also created these self-guided alignment cards. There's 48 cards in a deck to support you in living and loving from the true self. Each card has a wisdom teaching and a sentence stem. They're wonderful for your contemplative practice, work with clients, group therapy, or even parties or relationship building if the people in your life like to dive deep. So about 17 years ago, when I was in graduate school, I already knew that I wanted to bridge the divide between the transpersonal and spiritual transformation and bring that into a clinical space, but I wasn't offered any real tools of how to do that. I had the sensitivity, I just didn't have the knowledge of how to honor that subtle sensitivity that I had in my work with clients. I spent the better part of my private practice, the early years of my career, learning how to honor what I was seeing in the subtle energy of my clients. And I remember the first day that I saw this emotional energy pollution around my client's heart. And I was committed in that moment to learn how to honor not only what I was seeing, but the energy that was being stored in my client in a way that honored their sovereignty, that was collaborative, that was consensual, that wasn't making it that I was the seer telling them how to be, that I was reminding them of the healer within themselves. And I was a clear mirror because I wasn't in the experience. I could actually see my clients more clearly than they can see themselves. And so the invitation to listen to that subtle energy storing was a really beautiful moment for me in my professional development because my client and myself were so surprised by the vitality and the joy and the goodness that emerged from really listening to this subtle energy. And so the key to seeing subtle energy in our work with our clients is keeping our personality, our ego outside of the room. So any part of us that wants our client to like us, that wants to be the expert, that has this sort of social conditioning needs to be left outside of the room to make way for the transpersonal, the subtle, and the intuitive. And so as we're listening to clients, we are tracking their stories and we're paying attention to their psychology and their behavior and the way that they're making narratives and creating an understanding of themselves and the world. All of that matters. The way that their body holds this experience also matters. And then even more subtly, the way that their subtle energy is holding that experience becomes also essential information for transformation. So we're not favoring one over the other, but we're not excluding subtle energy either. And so once we start including the subtle into the other work that we're doing, regardless of your therapeutic orientation or your approach to coaching, once we start to honor the more subtle, the transformation deepens, the potential for healing and repair deepens because any blocks to vitality begin to be listened to, honored, validated, learned from in such a way that the body doesn't need to hold it anymore. And once our client's energy starts to move by the way of health, their clarity of thought returns. They have their own awareness, their own epiphanies about how they want to be in the world. And they begin to come deeper into alignment where their thoughts, their feelings, and their actions are congruent with the truth of who they are. And this is really made possible by our honoring the subtle energy and inviting our clients to honor and listen to that too. And that really amplifies what that subtle energy wants to say and how we can actually really listen to it. I find that it's actually easier to see and listen to subtle energy in the context of a therapeutic relationship than it is on our own, because both of us seeing that energy amplifies it, and both of us listening allows for that listening to be more clear. And another part of this really is when we are leaving our personality and that desire to be an expert outside of the room, we have more access to our intuitive senses. And so we become this open vessel of transmission for, for the client's healing. Again, we're not trying to assert that we're the expert onto them, but we're opening more deeply into our own alignment as we sit with our clients. And this alignment happens synergistically. We open up to ourselves as the client deepens into opening into themselves. And we're doing this synergistically as we are moving any blocks to the deepest, fullest contact within oneself, within our client's self. And as they deepen into contact with themselves, their subtle energy is moving and flowing more fully. If you want to learn more about specific clinical practices and coaching practices working with subtle energy, I really want to invite you to come take my courses. I have a longer course that goes over the full framework of how to guide and facilitate spiritual alignment with our clients. And then I have a mini course on working with subtle energy. And so if you know that subtle energy is important and you're not quite sure how to honor it in the context of your work with clients, I really want to invite you to come check that out on my website, thespirituallyaligned.com. I wish you so much goodness and blessings and transmission in your work with clients as you live your purpose. Thank you so much for listening.